Welcome to Discussions on Discord, thanks to Lenovo Legion. This is a video series where I get to chat with interesting people working in the video games industry, and today I am talking to Miles Ross. Thanks for being here, dude, all the way from the US.
I know, all the way from California. I'm in Los Angeles right now. I'm missing home, which is Sydney, very, very much. But thank you very much for having me, Steph.
So you've carved out an awesome path for yourself within the games industry, particularly in esports and commentating. You're currently in the US working as a caster for the Call of Duty League. But I'm trying to remember, was it working on screenplay that we actually met? Because it feels like I've known you for heaps longer than that.
It does feel like we've been friends forever. But yeah, screenplay was the very first time we ever met and worked together. I had no idea of like Australia's gaming world before screenplay, really. I didn't know anything about Good Game. I didn't know anything about that sort of stuff. And I remember coming across Barjo. He was actually in one level of the improv school I went.
Oh, the improv classes. Yeah, that's crazy serendipitous.
Yeah, and I remember somebody saying, because I was the guy who liked gaming at that point in time, I was a commentator and I had done some work and I had a bit of a body of work that was living online, and I'd just come back from the States and all my friends were excited. And someone was like, hey, there's another guy who works in gaming here. And I was like, who is it? And it's like, it's that guy, big, tall, Stephen. And I was like, oh, cool, I'll go talk to him. And he was like, hi. And he was so full of energy. And I was like, you're really fun. What's your deal? And he's like, oh, I love Halo. I'd love to see your work. And I was like, oh, sure, man. If you've got 19 hours, you can watch the whole thing. But he was like, yeah, follow me on Twitter. And we checked each other on Twitter. And I was like, who is this bloke? And that was my in. That was it. And it was just wild from then on out. Yeah.
I still think that's just incredibly coincidental that you guys kind of ran into each other
weird, yeah.
outside of video games. And I've been looking forward to talking to you because I actually don't know heaps about how you first got involved in the industry. I think when we were kids, it wasn't necessarily like an obvious career path to pursue, was it?
No. And I think for me, it was definitely something when I was younger, I was desperately trying to make my career, much to the dismay of my parents. So I really got my start in the video games. I don't want to say industry because it wasn't an industry when I first started. It was the competitive gaming world it was like a really weird, it wasn't cool, underground, counterculture, subculture. It wasn't cool at all. And it was just this sort of weird thing that we loved to do. So my friends and I, we basically played Halo 2 on the internet every waking moment of our lives. And that was pretty much how we got in. Word of mouth led us to a competition in Birmingham. It was called TSG. By the time I went to it, it was like TSG 3. And this was essentially, it was like everyone who rocked up put their money in the hat. There was a small prize pool and we were in a gym. And basically like we turned over the benches and put TVs and Xboxes on them. And it was really like a real rudimentary setup. But it was this same thing that we were just obsessed with as kids. I was truly, truly addicted and obsessed with playing Halo 2 competitively. I had a team. We were practicing against other teams online. We were competing in sort of like community-run tournaments that were set up on forums and things like that. And there was no real money involved. And it was the one thing in my life that I was truly passionate about outside of like, film and television. But we were just so addicted to it that anything to be involved in this space, we would go for it. And I spent a lot of time, and it obviously had impacted my schooling life, which again, my parents weren't crazy about. And it wasn't so bad at first because they were kind of just like, well, this is his weird hobby. I would get on a bus to Birmingham. At the time I lived in West Sussex in like really rural countryside England. I'd get on a bus to Birmingham, which my parents were weird about because again, at the time, like chat room, strangers were inviting my son to go up country. And my mum was like, no, I'm not cool with this. And it took like a phone conversation with another mum to make that all right. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old. Like I was relatively young. And to like go out into the wide world and play games with other people, my parents were just like, what? So it took a bit of convincing there. And even like, when I went to my first competition and came home with like £50 prize money, I'd spent easily triple that getting there, accommodation, food.
Just getting there.
I know, it was terrible. So that was really hard to convince them that this was totally okay. From a safety perspective, from a financial perspective, I was spending all my time doing it as well. And that was impacting every part of my life.
And this was Halo multiplayer that you were playing?
Yeah, we were playing Halo 2. We had our own custom rule set, which was like we were copying the Americans and doing what they did, the MLG rules. And yeah, we were just obsessed. We were absolutely obsessed with it.
Did you get to the point where you were kind of thinking about forming a league and traveling? Was it that sort of level of competition you were working towards?
Yeah, we were aspiring to what the States already had, which was called the Pro Circuit. And we did have something relatively similar in the UK. There was nothing ever as big. There was never as much money. We didn't have great investment. It was always just whoever put on the competitions at the time. And the scale rose eventually. I think the biggest competition we ever got to in the UK, there was hundreds of teams showed up. I mean, we're talking thousands of people in Birmingham at the NEC, the National Exhibition Centre. And it was a massive, like, it wasn't a spectacle. It wasn't the same sort of thing you see now. When you think of esports now, you think of stadiums and people playing for six figures. You know, they've got mad salaries. They've all got, you know, millions of followers on social media. No, we were quite literally smelly boys in a massive stinking convention centre playing for, you know, £1,000. But that was amazing for us. Like, it really was the most exciting thing imaginable. But we were.
Imagine it would have been harder too with the internet sort of speeds that you were kind of getting back then as well, made it harder to sort of compete online. It would have been a lot of local stuff where you had to get a level playing field with people.
Yeah, it was hell, to be honest, Steph. I had 512. I had like half a meg, and that was half of that was up, and the rest of it was like the minimal bit was down. Like I could tell in game when my sister had opened her laptop. I could actually feel it, and I was like, "Get off! We're practicing. I'm playing for money right now." And she'd be like, "Shut up, man! Just shut up!" I'm like, "Get off YouTube!" Those were the days, though. Really, just that it was tough. It's nothing like it is now. It was not glamorous. In fact, it was actually a weird thing in my life because I remember being at school the whole time. I was still finishing my school life. This was before like going to university, and I didn't go to any parties. I didn't hang out with my friends nearly as much as I should have. I lied to them for years about what I was doing because I was embarrassed by it. I didn't think it was cool.
Really?
Yeah, it was something that even though I was so fiercely passionate about, you know. And
it's such a different world now. That's crazy.
It's mad. Now I'm like, wow, you know, if you look at my Instagram page, I'm playing Call of Duty with Michael B. Jordan on a big stage. You know, it's so different now. Like, but at the time, it was not cool. It was my sort of weird, this dirty secret. It was like, it was counterculture. I was a nerd. I wasn't, and I didn't, you know, I couldn't flaunt it. It was only until I got to university and I was like, I'm actually a professional gamer. I've got a signed contract. I'm off to Japan this month. After that, I've got a tournament in Italy and I've got to go here and I have to meet these requirements and I've got to do these signings and blah, blah. And my roommates, my housemates at university were like, pardon, what are you doing? I was like, yeah, I know, it's kind of weird. And then I brought like this nice big TV and all this like really cool gaming stuff into like our shared house. They were like, oh, this is great actually. And we had fun with it. But it took a long time before it came cool to really share this sort of thing.
Yeah. And so how long were you playing competitively for?
It was about 5 years. I had good success. I made enough money at one point to keep my mum and dad happy when they finally realized that this was something, to go back to what you said about like making it a career, because it wasn't a career, it was an addiction more than anything. And very, very few people get to turn that into their profession. But
sure,
we were having a lot of fun. I didn't have a job at the time. I was working for most of the time while I was competing, I was like a production runner for a TV company in London. So when I wasn't doing that job, getting paid very, very little for that, I'd be at home practicing and playing games. And that was all I did. But there was one massive tournament called X League TV. And it was like a £10,000 prize pool. And it was all televised. It was all on TV. And my parents, they got to watch it. And I remember my teammates and we practiced the hardest we've ever practiced ever. I didn't see my friends. I remember telling my parents, like, I'm not going to be around for a while. Just pretend I'm dead. Just pretend I don't exist. I will feed myself. I'll take care of that stuff. And we really went hard for like 2 weeks, like non-stop, every single day, non-stop. We really pushed ourselves to the limit. Come tournament time, it was amazing. We smashed everyone. It was great. But it took a really big toll on my body, on my relationships, on my family, my friends. It was actually really, in some ways, really, really negative. And this is where we learn about the balance. And, you know, this is all part of the growing process as a young professional. But the success from it, when my parents saw the actual finished show, the product, they truly understood what this was. They saw me with the big novelty check. We raised the cup and we had commentators and everything you sort of see now in the esports world. And once they saw that, my dad realized very quickly, he was like, oh my God, this is like table tennis to me as a kid. I traveled the country playing in little competitions, doing this thing I love. I get it. And my mum was sort of like, well, as long as you're not in danger and you're not, you know, you're not doing drugs and whatever. I was like, yeah, we're fine, man. We're all good. We're just nerds. They kind of got on board then, but it took a long time before it became okay in their eyes. And now obviously it's fine, but it took a really, really long time before they really came around to that. This is a job and this can be something, this is more than just flashing lights and sounds.
And so then how did you go, I guess, transitioning into casting? Was that kind of like something that was a natural shift for you? Or did you have kind of like a backup career when you sort of left competitive esports?
It wasn't so much. I didn't have a plan. Definitely didn't have a plan. We were just sort of doing this thing as long as we possibly could. And for all the people involved, some of them who are still around to this day, some of them are commentators, some of them run competitions of their own, some of them have gone into broadcasting and they've taken all the skills they've learned there because, you know, we had to literally learn how to do everything in order to put on our shows, which has been really great. But I didn't have a backup plan. No, Steph. I just I was winging it until I realized, I think it was halfway through my life at university, I had a girlfriend at the time and I was really enjoying socializing. And I was this like, I'm the cool gaming guy. It become a big part of my life. And I was sort of wearing it on my sleeve now. And I stopped playing quite a lot. And I realized quickly that if I didn't compete every single day, if I didn't practice every single day, there were really hungry players below me, not only looking to beat me, but also take my spot in the team I was on. We were on a team called Dignitas. And we were a good team. We were really successful. Without the kind of time in, I started to drop off. And as soon as I dropped off, I was like, okay, I'll be the coach, you know, and I tried that for a little bit. It wasn't really fun. Teammates didn't listen to me and I was like, this isn't working. And then
I imagine that would have been difficult because you kind of sort of pushing yourself into a position of authority when they haven't seen you as that maybe beforehand. So that can be difficult for people to accept.
It was really difficult. They were a bit like, all right, mate, like, yeah, we get it, dude. You're not as good as you used to be. So now you're telling us what to do, but you don't know anymore. And I was like, come on. So that didn't work out. But I think it was my very last competition. I think I got third and I was really salty about it. I was like, whatever. And the tournament organizers were like, Miles, we've got a free mic and we have a stream back on Justin TV way before Twitch. And they were like, there's like 200 people watching it. This is just the other members of the community that couldn't make that event. And they were like, do you want to just do it? And I was like, give it here. And I was a prominent member of the community. I was quite outspoken. Gaming made me really gregarious and got me out on my show in a big way. So I grabbed the mic and I was like, these guys are rubbish. And I was very jovial about it. I was having fun. But that was like the first time I ever did it. And it was more from a point of like, I'm a player. I know what I'm talking about. So I can tell those at home from a high level what's going on here. But I slipped a lot of jokes in there and it was quite fun. And that was pretty much the beginning of it. After that, the organizers were like, hey, do you want to come back and do this again? We'll pay for your hotel and your bus fare. And I was like, yeah, because although I'm not competing anymore, these are still my closest friends, you know, outside of my like select group of friends from school. I love the community. I love this space. And it had been such an amazing thing for me growing up to, because I grew up in rural England. Like there was not a lot there. It was a very, very white middle class area, which my family wasn't really about that. We didn't have too many friends around there. So when in this gaming world, immediately I was exposed to, like from playing on the internet, people from different nationalities, like people from different backgrounds, you know, like everyone. I met all sorts of people, you know, I met like...
It was still an industry you wanted to be in and around and a part of.
100%, yeah. The amazing community built there, you know. I met all sorts of people there and I would never have found that if I just sort of stayed at home. So I wanted to stay a part of that and when I was given the opportunity to go to these events and still sort of like see my friends and be involved, I had to take it. And one thing led to another and eventually, you know, it became like a cool, every 2 months there's an event, I'm always going to be there, I'm going to commentate it. And there's some awful footage online, Steph, of those early days. It's dreadful, but it was just really fun. It was really good. It was like punk rock. We brought our own stuff, we made our noise, we had a cool energy about it, and we really loved what we were doing.
That's awesome. And so when you started thinking about casting and esports commentating as a serious kind of, I guess, avenue to go down, were there other people that you kind of were looking at in the industry who were kind of examples of the kind of career you wanted to have when you kind of focused on this part of it instead? It's
funny, I'd never actually focused on becoming a commentator ever. I wanted to be a comedian. I wanted to do stand-up comedy.
Right.
I just loved games, you know, that was the part of my
life.
life.
Please tell me there's awful footage of you out there of you doing stand-up comedy also.
There is.
I'll find it if there is.
There is, but you'll never see it. It's dreadful. But it was really, again, a really important thing that gave me amazing skills that I still use to this very day. So it's do things is the best advice I ever give to people. Do different things. It helps all over the place, and you never know when those skills are going to come back to help you. But I didn't look to it. I didn't want to do it. It just sort of happened.
And what sort of skills do you think you need to be a commentator? Because I feel like it's a very different thing than just straight television presenting or live streaming in other ways. You kind of have to. Well, yeah. I mean, how did you become comfortable with casting specifically?
So I was always safe when I did my game, whenever I commentated Halo, I was like, well, look, I've spent the vast majority of my adolescent life getting good at this. I know everything about it. I'll be fine. I can always talk, about the game. But when I moved to other titles, I quickly realized I don't know anything about FIFA, Call of Duty, Overwatch, Gears of War. I know nothing about these titles. So that was where improv really helped. Back to Bajo, back to, again, it all full circle, it all keeps coming back. Learning the skills I learned through improv comedy were invaluable in making me okay, the feeling that it was always okay to fail, to take risks, to be comfortable with failure, because in improv you die 1,000 deaths every scene. Every single time something doesn't work out, you have to die on stage, and doing that in a dark room in front of total strangers, it makes you quite tough after a while. So that was honestly the most liberating thing, that it's okay to fail. And I think a lot of performers, and this is the same in television, this is the same, in all forms of entertainment, you have to take risks. You have to get out there and try it, and it's really tough to do that. In esports, as in commentary, there are almost no safety nets. You are out there with a co-worker, typically two of you, and you are basically flying blind. You have a production team behind you, maybe telling you the breaks are coming, or you need to throw to this, or here comes the game, or whatever. But apart from that, it's just the two of you. And it is quite a nerve-wracking experience, because you're up there just flying the shit without any help from ground control. So improv really helped there in being flexible and being open to, again, failure, but also in yes-anding with a co-commentator who's also just as terrified, especially if they're an up-and-comer. And having, each other's backs up there really, really helps. So that was a really wonderful skill to have.
I'm really impressed with the ability to just keep talking. And sometimes you have to vamp and fill time. And that can be so tough, I imagine. I would run out of stuff to say in like seconds. And yet I suppose the improv helps in that way, where you just kind of have to find ways to be entertaining. Or, do you veer away from the game itself a lot when you just have nothing more to say about what's been happening in the game itself?
Sometimes, yeah. There's a fine art, I think, and this is something that a lot of younger commentators don't have, is the sort of the sense to, once you get away from the game, to reel yourself back. If we've just started talking about Stranger Things, go straight back, and I mean that literally, the show, just pull yourself back to the game. Make it less about you and more about the game, or more about the fans at home. There's a lot of sort of tricks, but like when the worst vamp I've ever had to do it was one of the CDL events in London last year. I had to fill for an entire hour because there was a dreadful delay, and I was with my co-commentator at the time, and the production crew were amazing. They threw videos at us. They gave us crowd shots, all sorts. But I literally told the crew, I said, guys, I can do this for as long as you need me to. Get me a deck of cards, a whiteboard, and a marker, and we can go for another 2 hours. I got this. I've been training my whole life for this. But it can be really, really tough. Yeah. But being able to talk underwater is another essential skill in this job.
Yeah. In the other Discuss on Discord I did with Nick, he was talking about the fact that he was asked to host the OPL here, and he knew nothing about League of Legends. Yep. And he kind of explained that to them. They're like, that doesn't matter. Just be like personable and funny, and we're just looking for someone to be entertaining. And he was like,
I can do that.
So I'd see him on Twitter being like, hey guys, here's a poll. Which of these like TV shows do you think are better? Or like, would you put peanut butter on this and stuff like that? And I was like, what is it you're doing on that show? Because it doesn't sound like esports at all.
I remember the first time I tuned in and he was like painting the characters from the game and with like his toes or something. I was like, honestly, Nick was born for this. This is so up his alley. But the thing with esports is like, we don't really know what we're doing all the time. So to go in there and be as honest as you possibly can, I think is the best thing. When I did Call of Duty for the first time, I remember I was approached by the guys from Activision, and I was like, guys, I'd love to work with your game. Like, it's a cool game. It's very big, but I don't know anything about it. And they honestly said the same thing. They were like, we don't care. We just want you to be you and do your thing. And I was like, give me 2 weeks to learn the game and it'll get better. And they were like, that's fine. And it's worked out. But that honesty of, and when I came into my first show on mic, I was like, I have got no idea what I'm doing, what I'm talking about, but we're going to have some fun. And the fans were like, yeah, right. And that's worked out, just that kind of honesty of just being very real about what you're doing.
Totally. And I guess too, there needs to be some sort of small spaces that people can kind of squeeze through who are not really versed in Call of Duty or whatever game that you're commentating. And I guess if you have that broader kind of reach for them to feel like they're getting some, fun entertainment without just super hardcore like play breakdowns and stuff, then you're creating a space that's more welcoming for a broader range of people.
I think you're absolutely right. And my approach to the esports world, first and foremost, is it's a form of entertainment. Back in the day, it was very much me, part of this community, putting on a show for this really tight-knit community, in jokes, super hardcore game analysis. But the level esport is at right now, I mean, every single time I look at that camera, I think my parents are on the other side, and they haven't got a clue what is going on. They have got no idea. So let's make this as fun and as energetic and as broadly approachable as humanly possible. And that has been my driving force as a commentator for the last 3 or 4 years.
Are there particular games that you haven't casted for that you would just love to cast for, or can you not say?
Oh no, that's a really good question. So Call of Duty's been the bread and butter for a long, long time, and that's fine. I've got to do a smattering of other games. I did a bit of Overwatch, a bit of FIFA. I loved Halo. Obviously, that was my game for a long time. I was so interested in Valorant for a while because I thought it's everything that's sort of exciting about Counter-Strike, but all the fun stuff that you get out of Overwatch, like the cool abilities and things like that. And I really enjoyed it.
I find it as someone who's like not, super versed in competitive shooters. I find Valorant like way more accessible just because I find it visually more appealing. I like seeing the variety in the gameplay with all the different abilities that you get, and I just like I think it's easier to follow. Whereas Counter-Strike, I find it all a bit of a brown blur.
It can be, yeah. Very.
No offense to Counter-Strike players.
It does. It's very brown. It's very brown blur with chicken here or there. Yeah, I know what you mean. The only other game I've always been really interested in, and this is a really nerdy niche one that not many people get, but Star Wars Squadrons has this very small but passionate competitive community, and I love watching their broadcasts because it's just like, I mean, I'm also a massive Star Wars nerd, but I'm a plane guy. I like my planes, and seeing that game played, and I was just like, oh, if I'd commentate like this, I would say these things and I'd that, and bring it in, and just watching the play as well, they were incredible. And that's like that little thing that I would love to do, but probably will never ever get the chance.
You mentioned when you started, it was very like grassroots. It wasn't a big stadium affair, very different to the way it is now. What are some of the ways you've seen the industry change since you've been a part of it in sort of esports specifically?
Aside from, we've seen suits and ties come and go, which has been a weird one. Okay. At first, we all thought like, we've got to make this real legit. We've got suits and ties. We're giving away millions of dollars. Let's show this some respect. After a while, we quickly realized like our audience is not that fussed. We're playing games at the end of the day. I mean, I wear this on broadcast. I'm wearing like a cardigan, essentially. As long as, you're sort of being honest and real with your fans and with your viewers, that's all good. I mean, what else has changed? Obviously, the production value's gone up quite a lot. When I think about the Call of Duty League now and the amount of people that work on it and how much thought and energy and love goes into putting on every single show is tremendous. It's not just like, back in the day where we had a couple of feeds of the game and we would run a graphic which was making fun of someone. Now it's really intense. We have a committed stats team. We have multiple people who work the broadcast graphics. We have a director, our director right now, he's an Emmy award-winning director. He does the Super Bowl, like it's a really big, we actually just got nominated for a sports Emmy for COD Champs 2019, which is unreal.
That's amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's unbelievable. So the sort of recognition has really blown up. And that's one thing that I don't think we ever really wanted in esports. We were never like looking to legitimize ourselves. We were like, this is what we do and we love this. And lots of people love watching this. We're just going to keep doing it. I don't think we ever were like, we have to get in the Olympics. We've got to get, we've got to do those things that everyone else has already done. Like we're carving our own path. And I think as long as esports keeps doing that and keeps trying to be as authentic and itself as it possibly can, I think we're going to do fine. Yeah, I think that's the biggest change, is keeping that authenticity. Because when we try and do the traditional sports stuff, it always feels a bit weird and no one loves it.
Yeah, well, I feel like two people, particularly people who consume gaming content, more than other sports and genres, want to see people that they relate to. So it makes sense that I can imagine the suit and tie thing isn't necessarily the best way to go. They want to see someone who sort of speaks more to them and, looks like someone like yourself who had a history in video games and not necessarily like all suited up.
Smelly nerds in hoodies, yeah. We are changing that a lot though. Gamers are so fit now. Everyone is so ripped all the time.
Oh, totally.
It's ridiculous.
I hear it less and less now, you don't look like a gamer, which I think was one of the most annoying things for for people to say. I understand that it was like a backhanded compliment. People would be like, wow, you don't look like a gamer. Like my vision of a gamer is this, and you look like a normal person. It's like, oh, okay.
I had that once.
Thanks, I guess.
Somebody said to me once, and we were like, oh, you're quite well adjusted for a gamer. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Unbelievable.
People who play video games are fully insane and unhinged.
Some of the most intelligent, wonderful people I've ever met in my life. Yeah.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
And you've traveled a lot, I guess, being involved in esports events around the world. And now you're in the States, obviously. We mentioned the Call of Duty League. It seems like a lot of the esports opportunities are outside of Australia because, you are obviously from the UK originally. You spent a lot of time in the States as well. When I met you, you were here in Australia. What brought you to Australia and then what caused you to leave?
So my wife brought me to Australia. I met my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, but I met her at university. She was on exchange and I fell deeply and madly in love. And I was stuck in the friend zone. Once I got out of the friend zone, I was adamant to never, ever let this go. And once my time at university finished, my original plan was to go to Japan and teach English because I'm a nerd and that's what I like to do. And that immediately vanished as soon as she was like, do you want to come to Sydney? And I was like, absolutely. I've got no other plans. Let's do it. So I packed up everything and I moved to Australia. I actually stopped gaming entirely then. I completely let it go. I said sort of goodbye to the Halo world because it was around the same sort of time the global financial crisis hit. So we actually didn't run any tournaments. Sure. There was no money anymore. And those few who were still plodding along, God bless them, they stuck it out the whole time. But I mean, I was like, well, I'm out. I'm going to go to another country. I'm going to change my life. And I actually didn't play games for like 3.5 years. Easily 3, maybe 4 years. And
that's crazy.
Yeah,
did you, that's such a dramatic shift. Yeah. Did you feel like you needed to do that to kind of like say goodbye to your former self and move on and be like, I'm an adult married human now and adult married humans don't play games?
I don't know. I think life changed so dramatically. I was just like, I don't have the space for it anymore because I was living at her parents, which was rough, but we love them. It was just, I didn't have like a console anymore. And I think what I did do is I got really into PC gaming because I had I had a MacBook and I was like, I can play StarCraft 2 on this. Let's do it. I can play Diablo. Let's do it. That's pretty much what I got there. But that was very, very minor. And it wasn't until I think Halo 4 came out that I was like, oh, I have to buy an Xbox. I have to buy a used Xbox and get this game. I have to do it. And that was one of the things that actually got me back into it. Because it was the Master Chief Collection coming out there where I really got my big break as a commentator. I got a phone call from someone in the UK that was like, he was my guy who ran those tournaments. And he was like, do you have a suit? Can you come to London? I've got the Master Chief Collection and you're my favorite. Can we do this? And I was like, yeah, sure, mate. And that pretty much after that event, the phone didn't stop ringing. But it was a cold turkey. Yeah, Steph, I really just disconnected. I was just running to the beach every day and like, living life like an Australian. And then I found out actually there's this massive gaming scene, super passionate mad fans that I've missed from the UK, and it's here still. And once I think I found that, there was no going back. I shocked my wife. She was like, who are you? And I was like, this is the real me. Yeah, she was shocked.
Well, I remember after we worked on screenplay together, I think it was even during screenplay, you were sort of turning down opportunities to go overseas and sort of work full time as a caster over there.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of the opportunities are very much outside of Australia still, particularly for esports. Do you see that changing?
I do see it changing. Obviously, COVID hasn't helped anything anywhere, which sucks. But I think for one thing, obviously, population size makes a massive difference. I mean, there are a ridiculous amount of human beings on this island in the US. It is absurd. And just that audience in itself makes a massive difference. I think Australia has a very passionate, more passionate, I think, than the US fan base of all games in general. I know that things like PAX, or like Rooster Teeth Expo, like the first place they went before going to Europe was Australia because there's such a thirst and a hunger for it there. But I do think that's going to change eventually. I think internet speeds really help. High-speed internet makes a massive, massive difference for players and for broadcasts in general. But the population is something that I think Australia will always have a little bit of difficulty with. New Zealand helps, but I think that's why when I think of most broadcasters, they move their operations to Southeast Asia as well and try and like pull all those sort of fans together is a goal right now for a lot of Australian esports organizations, and I think it's working out for them. But yeah, population's a hard one, Steph. It's just you need eyeballs and wallets. That's what you need.
Yeah. We do have a few things happening. The Melbourne Esports Open, they're definitely
Love it.
trying to make Melbourne the kind of gaming capital and stuff like that. IEM still happens every year, although I think it's digitally at the moment. And speaking of which, how has the past year kind of affected the way you work? Because obviously esports is very event based, and a lot of the work that I do is event based. So the last year has been a weird.
It's been weird.
Few months.
Yeah, I think initially we all thought it was going to be temporary, because the Call of Duty, the way we ran things last year was we were traveling almost every single week to a different city in the US, London, Paris, or Toronto. Those were the other cities we worked in. We would go there for events every other weekend pretty much, which was insane when I think about it. My wife and I lived on the road for about a year and a half, like hotel to hotel. Eventually we came back to Sydney for a little bit, saw you guys, did some work there, but it was non-stop travel. With COVID coming in, that has completely ended. And now, as you can see, I work in front of this green wall, this gigantic green screen, which has been a ridiculous transition, but testament to the skill of the people I work with, who were like, actually, we can do this. Thank God the game's online anyway, and we can do this. With, like, the Call of Duty League, or Blizzard in particular, they built their own software, which basically, they built a broadcast truck on the cloud. And it's not perfect, it's still being worked on, but there is software out there that can do it, and we pivoted pretty fast.
So when you're commentating now, are you in the same room as your co-commentator, or do you have to be in different spaces and they just sandwich you together?
They sandwich us together using the green screen. So my co-commentator Chance lives in Colorado. I'm in California, so there's quite a distance between us. But as far as we're concerned, we're in the same room. We have exactly the same game feed. We have the same producers in our ear. All the software we use now, I mean, it is a ridiculous operation to translate everything from a live event to our bedrooms. I mean, last year we gave away, $2 million in the COD World League, or the COD League rather, from my room. Insane to do that, And I think it's even stranger for the players as well, because you don't want to play at home. You want to be in front of a crowd, the passion, the energy and all that stuff. And the fans have really been so, I suppose, welcoming, because COVID changed everything in a couple of months. The mere fact that we could keep this going, and the amount of love and support we received from the fans, who were just like, thank God you guys are still running, because for a long period of time, traditional sports, they had to close all doors. No one was playing football, no one was playing, basketball, anything like that. We were the only thing running, and the amount of fans that were like, if you guys weren't doing this, we'd be going crazy, because there's only so much Candy Crush I can play on my phone.
That's awesome. Do you have I know you haven't really planned so much stuff in the past as far as your career is concerned, but do you have goals and plans for the future, or things that you kind of want to do moving forward in esports or gaming in general?
That's a really good question. And I am famously a man without a plan. I'm the opposite of Nick. I'm literally the opposite of Nick. I think with the gaming world, I mean, I'm going to be a commentator for as long as I can, until I really stop enjoying it. I think that's what I tend to do with my jobs, is once I don't love it anymore, once I don't literally scream and shout with all my passion, then it's time for a change. The cool thing about this space right now is I've met enough people, and I've got enough contacts and enough opportunities to basically try to go to other places and do other things. And I'm trying to learn as many new skills as possible. And I think going into production is a no-brainer. A lot of guys in my space, they like to become talent coaches and teach others, because one of the greatest things you can do is, once you get up there, send the elevator back down and help as many folks as you can, because we're always going to need more talent. I mean, that's one of the problems esports has right now, is we don't have that many truly capable commentators or on-air personalities. And I think that's one thing that the scene desperately needs. Not just more diversity and, more faces, but more skilled faces. It's all good and well having lots of different people, but if no one's really good, no one's going to pay attention, not going to stick around, and sponsors aren't going to be happy and all sorts. So I think that'd be a really cool thing to do going forward. But Steph, God knows what's going on. I can't even plan. The world changes so much these days. I don't know what to do next week. I'm like, well, I've got the COD League, but after that, God knows. So I'm not sure. We're working this out slowly but surely.
Well, what advice do you have for someone who's looking at getting into esports casting, or becoming a commentator? I know there's I don't see a lot of women in your line of work, but when I do, it's really awesome. Yeah. I imagine there's just a high sort of barrier for entry in feeling confident to put yourself out there. What sort of things could people be doing to pursue a career in esports casting?
Aside from being okay to fail and not being afraid of dying on camera, which will happen and will happen all the time. You just have to be cool with it. I think committing to, doing this thing is a hard one. A lot of people come and ask me like, how do I become a caster? And I'm like, well, you have to really give your heart and soul to it initially, because otherwise there's no point. I think the best advice I can give people is to get themselves in front of whatever game they want to commentate, learn as much about it as possible, find their own voice, and then record themselves doing it and having a body of work, even if it's just artificial. Like, this is me commentating a game that's already happened, and I turn the other volume off and I just put my voice over the top of it. Being able to do that and giving that to a tournament provider or a broadcaster saying, hey, this is my thing and I want to do it, is a really helpful thing to do. Because the amount of times we in the COD League go, right, we need another commentator, we look out there and a lot of people are like, I'm a commentator, and we're like, can we see your work? And they're like, no, I haven't got anything. I'm like, well, you need a show reel, you need something. So putting themselves in front of the game as much as possible and recording it is really good. Create a show reel and find the voice you want. Don't try to imitate others, because in this gaming, in the gaming world especially, and so if you know this, like, we as gamers and as fans, we can smell fake a mile away. So be you. If you could say 5 things about you now, I want to see 3 of them on your broadcast. That's some of the best advice I've ever been given. If like, who's Steph? She's this, and this. I want to see at least 3 at any given time within 6 seconds. Good. That's it. She's hired. That's pretty much what I got.
Oh, thank you so much for talking to me, dude. It's been really, really awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Let's do this again. And again.
Yeah,
and
we
again.
should. Well, we should stream together. We've just got to try and sort of marry up our time zone difference. But
absolutely.
I know you do a lot of streaming as well on Twitch. I think it's MilestheRoss is your Twitch
Across
handle.
all the socials, TikTok as well.
Across everything. And thank you to Lenovo Legion as well for supporting the series. I'm still hanging out for the day that you move back, Miles, because
We will.
I would love to work with you again.
Right on. And our dogs are going to become best friends. I'm not kidding.
Yes.
They're going to become best friends.
All right. Thanks so much, dude.
See you.